All right, welcome back to another episode with Diabetes 180. If you notice, I'm alone, but this is because KJ, our vegan influencer, we had unfortunately to reschedule because of scheduling issues. We're gonna be having her on our live in December, most likely. So look forward to that. We're still gonna be talking about the same topic today, though. The best diet for thyroid disorders. So that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. It's something I've always been excited to talk about, just didn't have the opportunity to. And what's interesting about thyroid diseases, like many other diseases, it is an autoimmune condition. And there's quite a bit of chronic diseases that are affected or caused by the autoimmune disorders. So thyroid this live is going to be very informative. Whether or not you have thyroid disorder, it's something that we should all definitely be mindful of. So I'm going to share some statistics, and as I'm sharing these statistics and as you guys are jumping on this live, please, as I always say, let us know where you're watching from. I always like to say a greeting to especially the faithful viewers. Let us know where you're watching from and who you are, so that we can greet you. If you have questions throughout the live, do not hesitate to ask any questions you might have in our chat. Actually, I should probably open up my chat here so I can see you. And well, I'll do my best to answer them. Right. So I don't know how many people who are watching are actually have thyroid disorders. I would be curious to know. So if you have a thyroid condition, whether hyper or hypothyroidism, please let me know in the chat. Say I have hypo or I have hyperthyroidism. Maybe you're just watching because you have a loved one that has a condition, but I'm definitely curious to know who is watching that has thyroid disorder of any kind. So just to be good to know. In America, 20 million people at this time have thyroid, around 20 million have thyroid disorder, either hyper or hypo. And 12% of Americans are going to have thyroid disorders sometime in their life. That's a lot. 12% of people living in America at some point in their life will be told by their doctor that they have a thyroid disorder. So that's huge. For women, it's even more common. It's 1 in 8 people. 1 in 8 women sometime in their life will have thyroid disorder. So if you're a woman and you have thyroid disorder, just know that you're not alone. It's more common in women. What are the symptoms? So question that you would get a lot is, how do I know I have a thyroid condition, right? It's really hard to just diagnose off of symptoms because the symptoms are so vast, right? And explaining the symptoms, actually, it could be a lot of different things that are causing the symptoms. But the people who I have diagnosed with thyroid disorder as a physician assistant, usually it's hypothyroid disorder. But just to understand what the symptoms are, you probably have to understand what the thyroid does. So the thyroid is actually a gland that sits somewhere here in your neck, upper neck. You can actually feel it if you swallow right here. I'm choking myself. You just put your hand right here. What we do is we stand behind the patient and we kind of grasp their neck like this, and we just have them swallow to bring the thyroid gland down. It's like a butterfly-shaped gland. And what we are feeling for is any nodules or masses or swelling in that area. That usually gives us a hint that there's something wrong with thyroid, and that's when we go ahead and test your thyroid, right? So I don't know if anyone's has had their thyroid checked. Have you ever had a doctor go behind you and touch on your neck, and you're wondering what is he doing? That's what he's doing. He's checking to feel your thyroid to see if there's any swelling or masses or nodules in your thyroid. Okay. What the thyroid does is a lot. So you could think of the thyroid as the master hormone regulator, right? It regulates many processes in the body. Some of the main ones are metabolism, so how we break down nutrients, energy, your tolerance for cold and heat. So If you think about someone who has an under-functioning thyroid, a thyroid that's not functioning properly, they'll have trouble with gaining weight, right? They're gaining weight easily. They find themselves cold all the time, intolerant to cold weather, right? You might find that yourself being fatigued, sluggish, low in energy. It's easy for you to fall asleep. These are signs, especially when they're all together, that there's something wrong with your thyroid. Other symptoms might be hair loss, if you find that you're losing hair easily, or dry skin. So that's underfunctioning or hypothyroidism, right? Again, if you guys are suffering from that, let us know in the chat. Hyperthyroidism, those symptoms are kind of like the opposite of hypothyroidism. So hyperthyroidism is an overactive thyroid. That's one who is maybe feeling very energetic, almost jittery, right? Some people describe having heart palpitations. Some people describe feeling trouble falling asleep. You might have symptoms like one of the common symptoms is feeling hot all the time instead of cold. You feel easily hot, intolerance to hot weather, to heat. You might find yourself hungry, right? You're eating and never satisfied, and you're losing weight. So you're finding yourself, it's hard to, instead of being hard to lose weight, it's hard to gain weight for people who have hyperthyroidism, okay? All right, Sherry, Hashimoto's, we're going to talk about that. So you have hypothyroidism. So that's a good segue into what causes thyroid disorder, okay? And what we're going to be covering is, of course, the topic right there, the best diet for thyroid disorders, right? That's what you guys want to know. What am I supposed to do now? What can I eat? And we'll answer any questions that I can answer toward the next 25 minutes. All right. So I'm going to try to keep it. I always try to keep about 30 minutes. Okay. But right now we're covering what causes thyroid disorder. So in the world, right, if you're talking about worldwide, what causes hypothyroidism is iodine deficiency. So many foods or food sources are deficient in iodine. That's why around the 1920s, everyone knows Norton salt. That's when they started to add iodine to the salt to supply it to make sure that we get sufficient iodine. So in America, you don't see much iodine deficiencies. Okay, worldwide, iodine deficiency is the cause of hypothyroidism. In America, here, the most common cause of hypothyroidism is autoimmune disorder. Okay, so it's autoimmune destruction of the thyroid gland. The same thing with hyperthyroidism. So when we have the immune system attacking the thyroid gland, that's called an autoimmune disorder, immune, the immune system attacking itself. And that is what we call Hashimoto's, when the result is hypothyroidism. Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which Sherry mentioned she has. I'm curious to know, is it Sherry the only one that has a thyroid disorder? Everyone else is good? I guess you guys are just watching because you have family members who have it. Let us know, talk to me. Let me know what you guys are dealing with. So hypothyroidism, autoimmune disorder. Hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease is the most common cause of hyperthyroidism in America. And that, again, too, is caused by autoimmune disorder, the immune system attacking the thyroid gland. But instead of the thyroid gland being underfunctioning, it becomes hyperfunctioning, because with Graves' disease, what happens is now the immune system is destroying what regulates the thyroid. It's like it's destroying the brake pedal, right, for the thyroid, that slows the thyroid down, and the thyroid can be hyperactive, and that's what causes hyperthyroidism. When you have hyperthyroidism, you need to replace thyroid. You need to take a medication that suppresses the thyroid gland. When you have hypothyroidism, you end up taking medication to not suppress the thyroid, but to replace the thyroid that's not being produced. Okay, I hope that's clear. If you have any questions, so that covers the first 10 minutes. Basically, we covered what thyroid gland is, what hypo and hypothyroidism is. So if you have any questions on that, still, we're going to move on to the diet, the diet that is best for it. The best way to understand the diet best for thyroid disorder is to understand that the diet that is best for autoimmune disorders. So It's very simple, right? It's very simple. So what causes, I'm curious to know if anyone does not know or understand what autoimmune disorders are, what causes them. But we're going to cover that briefly. So autoimmune disorders is what basically happens when your immune system is hyperactive, right? You stim and starts to target a local area, tissue, or cell in the body, right, and starts to destroy that tissue and cause, of course, the symptoms of where, depending on where that tissue is located. If it's a thyroid, it's hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. If it's a joint, it might be rheumatoid arthritis. If it's the pancreas, you're talking type 1 diabetes. So the immune system is now turning on the body. It's like your body is now an enemy, and it's starting to attack it. Why does this happen? Well, studies show that the most common cause of autoimmune disorders is environmental pollutants in our environment. Okay, so something from outside the body comes inside the body and triggers an inflammatory response. It triggers our immune system to create antibodies, specialized cells that are created by white blood cells to destroy enemy invaders. These antibodies are now destroying parts of you because they encountered something from outside the body. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, what are these pollutants? Right now, you must be thinking, what are these pollutants, Lewis? How can I avoid them? Well, the pollutants that we worry about when it comes to thyroid disorder are pollutants that are found in our food. Okay, so that should trigger us to think, okay, well then, if the food is a problem, what's the best food to eat to prevent or to halt some of this destruction? All right, so Audrey, you're hypo. Okay, thanks for letting us know that. This is going to be helpful for you. Mold toxicity. Yeah, Sherry mentioned that, mold. So you're thinking about that. But studies show, when you're talking about pollutants and toxicities that cause an underfunctioning or overfunctioning thyroid, by far, the pollutants that we get in our food are the most common causes. All right. And I'll just go ahead and say it. Animal-based foods are more triggering than plant-based foods when it comes to environmental toxins and pollutants. Now, I should ask that as a question. Which do you think? Well, now that I said that, you probably know the answer. I want to get some answers on this. So I'm asking you guys a question. All right, so just to get some interaction, and think about this. Where do you think pollutants would be more concentrated? In plants or in animal-based food? In plant-based foods or animal-based foods? Where do you think you'll find more pollutants, right? Toxins in plants, or would you find them in animal-based foods? Which do you think will harbor more pollutants when you're talking about, our food sources? I'll give a moment. So let's see. I want to see what we got. If the people watching are actually thinking. So, which has more pollutants, plants or animals? No wrong answers. I just want to know what you guys are thinking. Which has more pollutants, plants or animals? Obviously, I'll let you know what science says. But and it's definitely a fitting question, because a lot of people do worry about pollutants. You talk about, when you see news articles that talk about a toxin or a pollutant that is linked to cancer, we're ready to pull that food off the shelf, right? So a lot of people are worried about pollutants. You guys are taking long to answer, so you just want me to give you the answer? I don't know. Maybe you guys just don't have a clue, and you don't want Lewis to tell you. For time's sake, I'll go ahead and tell you guys to think. I'll help you guys think about the process of thinking. So if a blade of grass has, I don't know, 1 microgram of toxin in it, I don't know, something small, 1 unit of a pollutant in it, 1 blade of grass, right? Think about the cow that eats a whole patch or field of grass. See, pollutants are found in plants, but they are concentrated. Those pollutants concentrate up the food chain. So the cow that eats all the grass now has all the pollutants from all that grass in his body, on top of the pollutants that he has from being in his environment, right? Animal-based foods are always going to have more toxins, more pollutants than plant-based foods, because pollutants kind of how you call it, accumulate up the food chain. Same with all animal foods, anything that eats plants or anything that eats animals, especially those that eat animals. If you're talking about different seafood, things that are bottom feeders, eating feces, you know, unfortunately, those are going to be the ones that are the most toxic, right? And if those toxins now end up in our plate and in our mouth, in our body, they are likely to cause autoimmune disorders. So that's why, well, we'll share soon, plant-based foods tend to be protective, where animal-based foods can tend to be causative of autoimmune disorders. Another thing to think about, okay, in talking about the best diet for thyroid disorder, and autoimmune disorder, I think we probably need to do a live just talking about autoimmune disorders and inflammation. It'd definitely be worth it. But what do you think is more like, so if we understand that autoimmune disorders are caused by the antibodies attacking ourself, right? Because they were triggered by some kind of environmental something coming into the body that looked like a part of your body. Okay, they call them antigens. Antigens are the parts of a substance or a chemical that the antibody attaches to. Think of the antigen, or the part of that substance, being the receiving end of the antibody's mouth. Okay, it's what goes in the antibody's mouth and marks it for destruction. Okay. Audrey, I know I saw your comment about being hypo. I thought I mentioned. I don't know if you mentioned anything besides that, but yeah, thanks for answering that. I don't know if you had any other comments. You might have to write them again. But yeah, I want to ask you guys a question to think about. Okay, when we talk about causes of autoimmune disorders, what is more like us? Animal foods or animal proteins, or plant foods and plant proteins? What is more like us? Just think about this. What is more like our body? Are we more like plants, or are we more like animals? Obviously, our bodies are more like animals. So if our body is going to be triggered by something, it's more likely to be triggered. So our immune system is more likely to be triggered by animal-based foods and plant-based foods, because animal-based foods and the breakdown of them into our body as they enter our bloodstream are more likely to cause an autoimmune response, right, than plant-based foods, which are very dissimilar in their amino acid profile, right? They're not like us. So in general, I think I probably talked a little too much about this because I love talking about biochemistry, but in general, if you want to avoid any type of autoimmune disorder, whether it be type 1 diabetes or thyroid disease, you want to avoid animal foods, right? There's science behind it. It just makes sense. Now, I'm gonna share some studies that kind of highlight, the how this plays out. Unfortunately, when it comes to thyroid disorder, I can't share studies where where they took, let's say 50,000, 100,000 people, they put them on a plant-based diet and their thyroid disorders went away. We don't have those studies. Or we compare people with thyroid disorders taking medications to manage it versus using diet to manage it, and what happened. Unfortunately, there haven't been like large studies on that. But I believe in time we will have those studies. But it's good to know the science behind what will inflame the body and trigger autoimmune disorders, and avoid that, right, before these studies come out. So let me just go ahead and share this right here. So there was a study, and this is interesting because the Seventh-day Adventist Church is I'm sure many of our viewers are familiar with Seventh-day Adventist Church, but if you're not, it's a church that believes very much in healthy eating and healthy living. So they actually have a wide variety of plant-based approaches in their million-member movement worldwide. So they actually did a study where they compared the diet of omnivores, Seventh-day Adventists who are omnivores, eating meat even if it's just occasionally, versus lacto-ovo vegetarians, people who abstain from meat but ate eggs and milk and dairy, and full vegans. I believe the study involved about 66,000 people completing a survey on their diets, right? And what they found was pretty interesting. Vegans had the lowest rates of hypothyroidism, right? Lowest rates, while meat eaters meat eaters had higher rates. But the group that had the highest rate of underfunctioning or hypothyroidism were those who included milk and eggs in their diet. So it's interesting. So those who were vegetarians but still included milk and eggs had higher rates of hypothyroidism than even meat eaters. That's interesting, right? That should make you think. So definitely need to be more studies, but to me, this makes sense because milk, whether you get dairy in general, whether you're getting from cheese or of course milk or ice cream, wherever you get your dairy, the milk protein is made to feed a baby cow and turn it into a mama cow, right? A big cow, right? So it just makes sense that milk protein can be a trigger for autoimmune disorders because it really wasn't meant for human consumption. It was meant for baby cow. Okay. And I will definitely have a topic on this, but on milk and type 1 diabetes. There have been studies that show milk exposure in infants can lead to destruction of the pancreas in type 1 diabetes. So yeah, that's something to think about. I don't know if that's something new. Oh yeah, I didn't see that comment, Audrey. I did see you answer my question earlier. So good job. You know the answer. Animal foods for sure or have more pollutants. So yeah, I don't know if that's news for everybody, if that's surprising. But yeah, vegan diets. I wouldn't be surprised. I wasn't surprised when I saw that, but the fact that milk and egg was more problematic than possibly meat. Obviously, we still need more studies, right? This study is just one. We need more studies, but this definitely gives you pause, right? Makes you think. What about hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease, the most common cause of hyperthyroidism? I think so far everyone, anyone watching only has hypo. I don't think anyone commented they have hyperthyroidism, but same story. Vegans had 52% lower odds of hypothyroidism than those who included both milk, both dairy, eggs, or meat in their diet. So there's science behind it. There's evidence here. You could see stories and testimonials. Clients I work with who have thyroid disorders adjusting their diet and limiting, if not eliminating, all animal-based foods improves this autoimmune disorder, right? It calms down inflammation. And it makes sense because plant-based foods are full of antioxidants. We talk about that a lot in our channel. They are, when you talk about inflammatory index, right? A scoring system that scores how inflammatory foods are. Plant foods are the least inflammatory, where animal-based foods are the most inflammatory. Okay. It just makes sense. So I'm curious to know if anyone watching is vegan and still hasn't seen any difference in their thyroid function or thyroid testing. But the studies show that this is the best way to control thyroid conditions, thyroid disorders, is by adopting a plant-based diet that minimizes animal-based foods. But question that we need to answer, I'm sure you guys want to know, are there any specific studies that highlight a specific food that's good for your thyroid? Well, of course, it's nice to know that all plant-based foods are going to be best, for managing your thyroid disorder. And so that tells you a lot. Okay. Yes, Audrey, hypothyroidism is an autoimmune disorder, except for those who are living outside of America, where they might be in some countries, I should say, who are experiencing iodine deficiency. And we'll talk about where to get good source of iodine, because that's another thing I know you guys should maybe if you would ask that. But vegans tend to be have lower iodine, especially if you're not using iodized salts. We'll talk about how to get iodine at the end. Okay. So, but yeah, for the majority of people, especially in America, it is autoimmune destruction of the thyroid gland that leads to hypothyroidism. Okay. But a specific item is black cumin, powdered black cumin. I've never used this. If you know anyone who does use this or use it yourself, let me know where you get it. I saw that you can get it on Amazon. But powdered black cumin has shown to improve thyroid health, right? And not just thyroid health, but a number of other things. Lowering thyroid antibodies, so kind of reducing that destruction of the thyroid gland that cause a problem. Black cumin was shown to lower markers of inflammation, the inflammation that causes further damage and symptoms. And you also get they also found a 17% drop in LDL cholesterol. So this was a study that I think took place in 8 weeks, and all they used was half a teaspoon of powdered black cumin in this participants. And these were the results they got. So half a teaspoon daily black cumin could be something that someone who has underfunctioning or hypothyroid disorder to use. Okay. But of course, adopting a plant-based diet, nothing replaces that. Nothing really replaces that. So let me back out of that. So that's something that you definitely want to start using if you have an underfunctioning thyroid. Now, another thing I wanted to mention before we finish tonight is how you get iodine. So I know I've had questions in our group that asked about sources of iodine if you're not using iodized salt, and the answer I give is always the same: sea vegetables. All right, so sea vegetables, very common in Japanese cuisine, are packed in iodine. You don't need to run and get iodine supplements if you're not using iodized salts. Just get you a nori wrap, the seaweed, the wraps that you use for sushi, right? So you can get that at any grocery store and snack on 1 or 2 of those a day. That can be a great way to replace iodine in your diet. Tasty treat, and it's good for you because it has a lot of other vitamins and minerals that are good for you. So, and also it's good for blood pressure. Studies show that nori wraps could be good if you have high blood pressure. So get yourself that if you're wanting to make sure that you're sufficient in iodine. All right. I don't know if there's any other questions, but I basically covered all the topics I wanted to tonight on thyroid disorder. I guess I should also say I've had a question before about cruciferous vegetables. Some people feel like cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, or soy milk. Also, I've heard questions about soy milk being problematic for those who have hypothyroidism, and the answer for that is no. It is not problematic as long as you're not taking it with your thyroid medication. So if you have thyroid medication, and the problem with that is the absorption. When you eat anything with your thyroid medication, your doctor should have told you wait 30 minutes before you eat when you take your thyroid medicine, because it affects how that medicine is absorbed. So that's the only problem you might have with any food, including the ones mentioned. Okay, but you could have soy milk, you could have cruciferous vegetables. It would not be a problem with a person with thyroid disorder. Yeah, Sherry, I'm guessing you're asking how nori wrap is spelled. I believe it's Nori. I'll put it here. Let me apply it to you here. Nori. I think it's spelled nori. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but you might find it in the any specialty aisle, and I think Walmart has it. So yeah, check that out and start snacking on it. All right. So yeah, I guess that's all I have for the night. Unless you have any questions. Processed veggies, yeah. So I mean that's good. That's a good question. A lot of people ask, should I then buy organic vegetables? I don't know what you mean by processed veggies. If you're talking about like processed veggies, like veggie cereal or veggie chips, or things that are so far from a vegetable that that's a shame that it has veggie on it. Yeah, you should limit that. But if you're talking about like veggies that are non-organic, maybe, I wouldn't say that's a problem. Studies show that, there have been studies that compared organic vegetables versus those who just got vegetables that were not organic. And there's if it's going to break the bank for you, then go ahead and eat your vegetables, even if they're non-organic. You're still going to get a lot of the benefits from that. Okay. So yeah, you want to avoid any processed or additives, but let me put it this way. God is so good that he puts so much nutritional value in plant-based foods that even some of these additives, though I don't encourage I do encourage limiting processed foods as much as possible. Do not be so worried about vegetables, if they're not organic. That's why I want to get for sure. But obviously, if you're eating mostly whole plant-based foods, you're not going to have the maltodextrin and sour and all these additives in whole foods, right? Get a potato, get a beans, whole brown rice, bell peppers, whole grains, right? There's so many whole plant-based foods that you could that consist of the majority, as long as it can consist of majority of what you're eating, right? That's what we promote on this channel, right? But Sherry, you're right in a way, because if you're eating whole food plant-based, you're not going to have exposure to a lot of processed foods, right? Or processed ingredients. Okay. So yeah, good questions, guys, man. I think that's up. We are over 30 minutes. I always try to keep it at 30 minutes. Next week, I believe we have another guest. If not next week, I think it's the week after. We'll be having guests on our show as much as we can, because it's always fun talking with people. But yes, if you have any questions, leave it in the chat. As a freebie, don't forget to get yourself a consultation. We always have a consultation link in in the description section of our shows. So if you go, I think it's on Facebook, it's like in the description section, might be below the video or above the video. In YouTube, I think it's below. The link is always going to be there if you want a consultation to work with a diabetes reversal health coach. I also work with anybody who is suffering with I would say autoimmune disorders like thyroid disorders, type 1 or type 2, type 1 being the autoimmune portion of it. So get yourself a consultation. It is free at the moment. It won't be free forever. All right. So beloved, I pray above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. See you next week.